Jill, welcome back to Mea Culpa. So good to see you, my friend. Million things going on. Hour goes by, unfortunately, way too fast when I'm fortunate enough to have someone like yourself on. So I'm going to jump right into it, okay?
Excellent. Thank you for having me, Michael.
Pleasure is all mine. So look, Jill, Congress is back from its cushy summer recess. But instead of tackling things like inflation or healthcare and the myriad of other problems existing in America right now, they're walking straight into the firestorm of the Epstein files. Is this going to be real oversight, or do you think it's going to be some carefully choreographed cover-up?
I fear it's the latter. I've been watching the victims and survivors testify. It's a shame that the way we're seeing them is at a outdoor press conference instead of as witnesses, given the serious attention they deserve. They were very, very compelling, very moving. We have women now who were 14, 16 at the time, telling of their stories and how they came to be brave enough to come forward. And they even offered that they are going to try to put together a list of the people who abused them, not just Epstein and not just Maxwell, two of the prime leaders of this, but of anyone else that engaged in abusive behavior with them. And I think that's important, but only if it's people who are still in power who need to be held accountable. And I think the victims, survivors, are now looking for passage of this Transparency Act, which makes so much sense and should pass, and has bipartisan support. Maybe not enough, but has bipartisan support. And they're looking for accountability. None of them mentioned, I could just divert a little, it's really right on topic, is nobody said, I want to hear from Acosta. I want him to publicly testify why he gave him a non-prosecution agreement. And we need to hear from him. So that would be one person right away that I want to hear from.
Yeah, well, I got to agree with you on the notion that I think it's the latter. It's carefully choreographed cover up for it, because I too watched the Epstein victims, because that's what they are, Epstein victims. And these brave women who've been ignored for decades, 40 years, decades, standing there on the steps of the Capitol, demanding that our president, that Trump, help, and that the unredacted release of the files be made available. So legally speaking, how much pressure do you think that puts on Congress to act? And politically, can they even afford at this time to ignore it?
Well, I think emotionally, it pressures them a lot, because you couldn't watch that and not feel their pain and feel the need for this, and to feel the need to protect future generations. One woman even testified particularly about the Maxwell interview by Todd Blanche, which that I can talk to legally as to why it was a total crock of you-know-what. It was a revolting and very calculated move to protect Donald Trump by Donald Trump's lawyer, not his former lawyer. Once you're a lawyer, you're sort of always the lawyer and you have an obligation. But she testified listening to her testimony, because you can listen to Ghislaine Maxwell's testimony as well as read it. Hearing her voice was so triggering to her, because it was the same calm, controlled voice that enticed this particular woman into being a victim of Epstein. And you can only imagine hearing her voice and then seeing the result of that is, oh, Donald Trump had nothing to do with this. Oh, I didn't do anything wrong. Oh, Epstein didn't do anything wrong. And then getting transferred to this prison camp. I'm sure it's something you would have loved, when you were serving time. It would
Well,
have
in
been
fact,
at
that's
the end.
exactly where I had, Jill, that's exactly where I went. I went to what's called a low security, the lowest of all, which is exactly what FCI Bryant is in Texas. I just did it in Otisville, New York. There were no gates. I had a car. I was able to drive around the facility because myself and Big Mike, Sprinkles, and a whole slew of other people, we used to go around with tools, and I'm talking about electric tools, drills, unit fixing stuff, literally fixing stuff all day long. Because I put together a whole crew of individuals. We were fixing fire hydrants, painting the facility, you name it, digging ditches, building stuff, welding. So, yeah, I mean, I understand. But I do want to say this. Don't mistake the fact that even FCI Bryant, which is like Otisville, a low security, you're not free. You are away from your family, which is, or was, I should say, for me, emotionally devastating. You have count twice a day. You're eating dog food, assuming when they even feed you. You're sleeping on a mattress that's about, I don't know, a third of an inch thick. It's freezing. The facilities are garbage. So her facility, in fact, the FCI Bryant, is substantially nicer than the facility of Otisville, which looks like an old, broken down, shitty YMCA
Mhm.
summer camp.
Did you get to leave campus to go to work?
No, everything is
Yeah.
self-contained.
And that is, I mean, I don't mean to in any way minimize jail, prison. You are locked up. You are not free. But Epstein was free. He got to
Yes.
leave every day. He had a very good sweetheart deal. So, and my understanding is that Maxwell also may be able to leave during the day. That doesn't mean she doesn't have to come back at night and suffer the consequences and be away from family and friends and work, but it's a sure better deal than she had before. And she needed special permission to be allowed at this facility because normally they would not take a pedophile, a sexual abuser at this facility. But
Okay, so let me
she
jump
got
in
it.
for 1 second here. That's right. Let me jump in for a quick second here to sort of explain the rules, which unfortunately I had become an expert in. There are two specific factors that make this Ghislaine Maxwell move to FCI Bryant so unusual, and I think the better term is unprecedented. First and foremost, as you said correctly, she's a sex offender. Sex offenders are considered violent criminals, and they are not eligible for low security facilities like FCI Bryant. Even on equal footing, you cannot have a sentence greater than 10 years to be permitted to be in an FCI Bryant low security facility. She still had like 16 or 17 years left. So they completely ignored these long-standing precedents for her. And the real question that I now want to ask you is not who's protecting her. The real question is why.
One can only assume that if she were to testify truthfully, that she would be naming names of powerful people, whether her testimony about, oh, I just thought President Trump was such a gentleman, which she volunteered. It wasn't even an answer to a question. She just was going out of her way to say, oh, please pardon me. Please pardon me. That's what I'm here for. Obviously, she's being protected by the White House. Todd Blanche is now at the Department of Justice, but is subservient to the Attorney General and the President. The President shouldn't be involved because the President shouldn't be involved in anything to do with DOJ. The independence of DOJ has been totally obliterated, as have so many things. I mean, Rudy Giuliani getting the Medal of Freedom. Talk about devaluing an award. That certainly does it.
I want that medal. I think I deserve it. I certainly know for a fact I deserve it a whole lot more than Rudy Colludi, drunken Giuliani.
I would certainly say that is true. It's Stormy Daniels deserves it. I mean, so many people deserve it ahead of Rudy Giuliani. I can't even think of one thing that would justify his getting it. If he had gotten it right after 9/11, maybe
I would agree.
then. Okay, maybe then. But he has so dishonored that reputation and that memory that he is completely ineligible for any recognition from this government, period.
And end of story, drop the mic on that one. I'm with you 100%. I think Rudy is a complete and total disgrace. By the way, he wasn't just a disgrace to the profession of law. I think he was a disgrace to his own client, right? Whether it was the hair dye dripping down his face on a mistake that he made, the Four Seasons landscaping next to the morgue and the porn, the porn shop, and not porn as in I'm going to go pawn my stuff to get money. I'm talking about porn, like porn. Anyway, let me ask you this though: if those files stay redacted because several different members of Congress came out furious, and rightfully so. 30,000 documents have been released. Okay, bravo. By the way, I'm still waiting for some of mine on the 486,000 documents that I've gotten none. So bravo that these 30 plus thousand, 32, 33,000 documents have been given over to Congress. I applaud them for doing something. Here's the problem. As Thomas Massie, a Republican, working alongside a Democrat, Ro Khanna, who, by the way, we talk about this as if all of a sudden this is some great miracle. A Republican and a Democrat getting together in a bipartisan manner to ensure that a file on the worst sex offense scandal, I think maybe in America's history, is now being worked on by both sides of the aisle to ensure that the files are given over to Congress and to the American people. I don't know why we're making such a big issue, but Massie went on to say that there are whole pages where there's like 3 words, and the on the page, completely worthless to them and this investigation. So if those files stay redacted, aren't we basically institutionalizing secrecy around sex trafficking at the highest levels of power? I mean, what precedent does that set for accountability when corruption and perversion intersect?
Let me say, I'm going to be the careful lawyer in answering this because we do not want to accuse people or tarnish their names just because they're listed in a document. And so I think there has to be some redaction. It depends on what the purpose is. If we're investigating Alex Acosta and why he did what he did, we need full disclosure of everything that went on, because he was acting as a public official, doing something that makes no sense, and we need to make sense of it. I don't know what's in the files. I certainly want to see what was reported to the FBI and why they did nothing. As the survivors talked about, they said in 2009, this is what I did. They go back a long way for having made disclosures and nothing came of it. And I certainly also want to investigate why they weren't notified about Ghislaine Maxwell's transfer, why they weren't notified of any of the things that they should have under the Victims' Rights Act been notified about. Those are things that have to be unredacted and fully disclosed. There will no doubt be people who flew on the plane, maybe not to his island, maybe to other places. Just because you were on the plane doesn't make you a sex offender. I'm very interested in the offer that was made by the victims to say, we will provide you the names of the people who trafficked us. That's perfectly legitimate. I go back to my time as a prosecutor and the value of grand jury secrecy, something that is very important to getting witnesses to cooperate and testify, to give you the information you need to conduct a valid investigation that would lead to an indictment. Indictments are probably long since passed. I'm not sure what the state statutes of limitations are. There are some crimes that there is no statute, and pedophilia may be one of those crimes that has no statute of limitations. And so then all those people are still liable for what they did back then. And their names should be revealed, and the government should be held accountable for bringing them into a court of justice and letting a jury determine their guilt. So I think we need, obviously, a page of black markout doesn't do a thing. And redacting names of abusers also continues to let them hide in plain sight. So we need a way to get that information public. And some of it is what the survivors at the time told the investigators that nothing was done with. That needs to come out. And I would really love to see an actual hearing that's really conducted properly. And I don't mean where the members of Congress speak and don't let the witness speak. That happens all too often.
All the time.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to see them ask a question and let the answer come out.
So two things here. The first part, which is, I have made the same statement that you just made, and I have gotten kicked in the teeth from Democrats and even independents, followers here on Mea Culpa, my Substack, my YouTube channel. I've gotten kicked in the teeth when I turn and say, just because somebody was on Epstein's plane doesn't mean that they are a sex offender. And people are like, why are you protecting Trump? Well, I don't know if I could be clearer to all of my listeners. And I'm so thankful. Mea Culpa has actually passed 500 million downloads. So we have quite a few listeners. I am not protecting anybody. Not Trump, not John Doe, not John Smith, nobody. All right? I am merely stating, as you are, from a legal perspective. I don't want to indict somebody simply because I don't agree with them, simply because I don't like them. That's not justice. That's vengeance. And that's not who I am. So I want to be clear. I want the complete and total unredacted files to be given to Congress and the American people, minus only the names of the victims. I do not believe that the victimizers should have any rights to hide, just the same as you. I truly believe that.
I'm just drawing a distinction between the victimizers, who definitely do not deserve it, and those who might have been innocent participants, with this caveat. Anybody who was on the plane or in any way mentioned in these files should be a witness, at least in a closed investigation, because they
might have seen something.
They might have seen something. They may know something. They might not. I mean, you could imagine being at a party where something bad is happening, but you didn't happen to be aware of it. But if you're on the plane 5 times, if you're at the mansion 5 times, if you're at wherever else, I want someone to be able to ask you questions. And I don't mean Todd Blanche. I mean Maureen Comey. I mean someone who is a legitimate investigator.
Well, let me ask you this then, because it's not as if this gathering, this appearance just popped up yesterday. This was something that was planned.
Yes.
It was something that was advertised by the lawyer. There's one lawyer who represents quite a
Right.
few of these brave women that stood up there, bore their souls, told their stories, cried, shook, had to relive these horrors that took place 4 decades ago, give or take, to some of them. Wonder why. As I watched this on Midas Touch Network, who live streamed the whole thing uninterrupted, I was wondering, why didn't they come with that list right now? Wouldn't that have been something? Turn around and say, we don't know the names of every single one of Epstein's friends. We just don't remember. I was 14 years old at the time. But these are people who we do know. So here is a preliminary list. I mean, there were what, 20 or so women and individuals that were there who were all victims of these Epstein crimes. Really? You can't put the 20 of them together in a conference room and say, each one of you, just write down the names of anyone that you could remember, but be certain about it. And then just turn around and release a preliminary list prior to having access to their files. Like the one victim turned around and said, I want to see all the documents that relate to me. I'm entitled to it. It's about me, and it will help me to remember in greater and better detail. I was just a kid at the time. Powerful.
Very powerful.
So I was curious, why do you think they didn't release a list?
I wonder.
And why not turn around and say if Donald Trump was actually on that list? If he's not, he's not. If he is, he is. Just, I don't know the answer. You don't know the answer. The people that are constantly kicking me in the teeth turn around saying, you know, fuck you, I don't know. When Jeffrey Epstein and Trump were best of friends, I was still in college. I mean, I was in college from 84 to 88. I was in college, 88 to 91 in law school. I mean, give me a freaking break. Why not turn around and say he was or he wasn't?
I wonder the same thing. The only mention of him was how Epstein and Maxwell bragged about their friendship with him and how often they mentioned him. There was no one there said he abused me or he witnessed and watched my abuse. And there was also some careful not answering questions that related to some specific people. I don't know what their logic was on that, but I agree with you. I wondered why, if they're doing this and they've had all this time to plan, they didn't at least create a partial list. I understand they're particularly interested in getting those who aged out of being of interest. This is my interpretation of what they said. Aged out of being of interest to Jeffrey Epstein. They got too old for him. And so he would pass them on to other friends. Wexner was mentioned as one who everybody knows, and he's been identified before. I don't think he's suffered any consequences, but maybe his reputation is different now. They could have done that, and it certainly would have gotten more attention, but it should have been done in Congress under oath.
Right.
In front of them. That's where I would have liked to have seen it. And maybe they're holding it off in the hopes that this will provoke enough attention that they will get the hearing they should get and that they will get passage. They only need 2 more Republicans to sign on to get this bill forward. And maybe they're hoping that this looming list will be enough to get people to say,
well,
okay.
You think that this looming list is going to be more explosive to get 2 Republicans to sign on by turning around and making mention of whether he was or he wasn't? I mean, it's a very simple thing to turn around and say, I just couldn't figure it out. You know, look, we all knew about Les Wexner. Les Wexner, by the way, gave Jeffrey Epstein like a $16 million townhouse on 71st Street. What do you think? He gave them because Jeffrey Epstein's a nice guy? No, right? I mean, the whole thing to me, I think it reminded me very much of, and I'm dating myself. You'll know what I'm talking about. So to those of you Mea Culpa listeners that maybe are obviously younger than there was a time, it was a TV show called Dallas, and the cliffhanger was who shot JR?
Yes.
JR Ewing, right? And you had to wait like 6 months before you found out. And even the very first one, everybody watched it. It was like 80 million people watched the show, but you never found out on the very first one. They drag it on and on. It's like you want to pull your hair out of your head, right? Sitting there. Oh, fuck. Well, I have an idea who shot you. Fuck you. You have no idea who shot him. Nobody knows unless you're the writer of it, right? I mean, same thing here. Why not just come with a list? Come with a big giant bulletin board and turn around and start pointing to it. That's what I would have liked to see.
Yeah, but wouldn't you rather see that in a more dignified setting?
No.
And what
dignified
was
setting right in front of the Capitol.
Did you hear all that shouting in the background? Was that protesters or supporters?
Supporters.
Okay.
I think it was supporters because I saw a bunch of people holding signs, justice for the victims, blah, blah, blah. Let me ask you this, though, because you and I both know that there are members of Congress who probably don't want this can of worms opened. All right? They want to keep this Pandora's box nice and shut. You think their own ties to Epstein's orbit will kill any chance of transparency?
I don't know that any of the people currently in Congress were involved with him. Maybe some, I don't know. And none of this makes any sense. I don't know why anyone, given the public pressure and the public outrage and the volume, the percentage of people who want this released, I think in the end, it may not be all that exciting once it is released, but if people want it released and it's not from grand jury, and right now, Maxwell has an appeal pending, so you have to be careful about her rights. No matter what you think of her and no matter how guilty you think she is, she's entitled to have her rights protected. And so you can't release information that wasn't introduced into evidence that could impact a future retrial should she be granted the relief she wants. Now, of course, she's asking for complete exoneration and saying, well, I am protected by the special deal that Epstein got.
By the way, and I think she is. If you read that special deal, I find it just not implausible that a judge, especially a judge that is directed to read it that way, but it's not implausible that her argument could be granted. That's
there is one thing, Michael, let me point out one thing. If you look at the crimes covered by the NDA, or the non-pros agreement, and then you look at her indictment, the time periods do not align. So I think that there is a substantial legal argument that the people who were exonerated by this which I can't even tell you how unusual it would be to say, I'm giving you a non-pros agreement and I'm going to free everybody that you worked with on this. It's for a time period that preceded her indictment. And so I'm not sure that it covers it. I think it's.
Would you turn around and say that she has zero chance of being exonerated on this?
I would.
It may not be 50-50, but would you say zero?
No, I would never say zero. First of all, because my trust in the judiciary is pretty good at the lower level. The higher up you go, the less I have trust. The Supreme Court, I could tell you in normal times my prediction for the outcome of a case based on precedent. I no longer can do that because precedent is being thrown out at every turn. So you cannot predict what the court will do in any particular case. So no, I definitely would not say zero. I wouldn't even say, that there's only a 10% chance that she won't be. I think
I'm with you.
there's a chance. I'm just saying it would be wrong. It would be incorrect legally and factually. But I've seen a lot of things that are wrong factually.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And right now I'm more worried about what's going to happen right here in my hometown as we are preparing for the invasion of federal forces, and for no particular purpose. It will do no good. It's likely to do harm. It's the wrong solution. Yes, we have crime in Chicago, less than in many of the red districts that are going to send troops to protect us. But it's on the downward trend. It's not low enough. People are afraid to walk the streets of Chicago in the best of neighborhoods. We need a solution. This is not the solution. This is the wrong solution.
I agree with you. So let me ask you this. As I watched the press conference, there was another aspect of it that gave me goosebumps. Actually, it broke my heart. It really did. As I watched one of the survivors directly calling out to Trump to intervene. And that's something that you almost never ever see, right? What does it say about the failures of our justice system that victims have to beg the President of the United States for truth to be released?
Well, you're correct in your assessment. And I had a slightly different reaction. I felt it was tragic and hopeless, and that there was no chance that Donald Trump will do anything that isn't in his own interest.
This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Now look, you and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement this season on Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Look, I'm so excited to see Saquon Barkley take the field this season. And I'm thinking in that the first game, he can even have more than one rushing touchdown. Prize Picks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you can cash in. Prize Picks is also the best way to get action on sports in more than 40 plus states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means that you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. In fact, you can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks is the best way to win cash this football season. I mean, which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks, it's the best place to win cash while watching sports. So join millions of users and sign up today. So download the app today and use code Cohen, Cohen, to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code Cohen to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right.
A plea from someone who has suffered all these years, as compelling as it was to me and as emotional as I responded to that exact phraseology, I thought there's no chance that it's going to work on Donald Trump. It might work if she calls out to members of Congress. Do this for your wives, your daughters, your cousins, your staff. Do it for me.
How about your constituents?
Do it for
the American people.
Exactly. I mean, that maybe would persuade enough members of Congress. I honestly believe Donald Trump is beyond hope. And I will tell you just an embarrassing thing. I have been working for the Equal Rights Amendment since 1976, when you were still in grade school. And I tried to reach out to President Biden with no success. I spoke to the person in his office who's in charge of the issue and didn't make any dent. And then I adopted the attitude of Donald Trump said he wants to help women. Well, here's how he can. he can get Congress, who he controls, to pass the joint resolution that says that timeline doesn't matter, which I believe legally is correct. But they could eliminate the possibility. And I actually, for a moment before he was inaugurated, believed that maybe that could work. I see how stupid that was, how ridiculous. What was I thinking? There's no way he's going to help pass the Equal Rights Amendment. So calling out to Donald Trump is a waste of time.
Oh, all right. So let me then take us a couple thousand miles to the other side of the globe. China literally just hosted Putin, Kim Jong-un, Modi at this thing called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, the SCO. That's nuclear power, authoritarian muscle, and economic heft all in one room. Jill, question I got to ask you. Are we watching a new anti-American alliance take root? And how dangerous do you think that this is?
I think it's extremely dangerous. I think it is the new power center. We Americans are losing the respect of all aligned nations, the entire of Europe, the entire of NATO, the entire of democracy. You mentioned Modi was there. Modi represents the largest democracy in the world. They have more people than we do. They are a huge democracy, and they are a democracy. Why is Modi? That's because we're putting stupid tariffs, which have been declared illegal by a court. Yes, it still has to go to the Supreme Court. And as I said, I don't trust the Supreme Court to do the right thing or to do the thing that precedent would call for. So this is a danger. You have Donald Trump supporting dictators at every turn, whether it's in South America, whether it's in Europe, whether it's in Eastern Europe. His behavior with Putin was beyond embarrassing to watch. His treatment of Zelensky in the first meeting, the only thing that stopped it in the second was the power that was arrayed alongside of Zelensky of the entire European Union. It is very frightening, and how people don't see it, how people don't respond and start saying, we have to change this. Democracy is in our hands. And, you know, you may think democracy is not working very well for you. Well, let me tell you, it's going to be a lot worse in a dictatorship. And so, you know, I think it was Winston Churchill who said that democracy is the worst form of government except everything else. And he was right.
You know, do you know, you take China, take Russia, take North Korea, smallest of the players, and then you have Modi, India. On top of that, at this SCO, you also had Iran, you had Turkey. This SCO group that showed up, hugging and kissing and smiling for the camera. Do you know, how big do you think, Jill, this group is as far as on a global platform in terms of size? You have any idea?
I don't know numbers, but it certainly outweighs
so let me give it
the
to
rest
you.
of the world.
Let me give it to you. 43% of the world's population is dictated by this group of gangsters. 43%. More than 25% of the global economy of the world exists in this group. More than 25%. I'm sitting there, I'm saying to myself, and now you have Putin and Kim showing up in Beijing. It's not just symbolic, watching this group of gangsters walking down that red carpet. It's actually a thumb in the eye of Washington. It's a thumb in the eye of Trump. Question I want to ask you, you think this emboldens Trump to double down on his America First isolationism, or does it risk boxing America out of global influence altogether? That's a question I can't figure out.
I'm not sure that's a question, because isn't it one and the same? His America First is boxing us out of the global economy. What he is doing is exactly that. So it's not an either or. It's bad for America, and it's time for Americans to realize that. I'm actually surprised when you say it's 25%. I would have thought it was more than 50% of the economy. I just was reading about China's shipbuilding capacity.
Yeah.
They have so much more capacity and so many more ships. They will completely outnumber us. And now they don't have submarines, which are apparently essential in war fighting, but they have a huge capacity, and ours is limited. Ours is not going to work very well. We need parts and materials from other countries, and we're not letting them in. We're putting tariffs on them. I've seen prices go up. Why isn't everybody protesting? If you get a catalog from something you had a year ago and you compare the prices, they're at least 30% or more. I don't know how you put two mores in that sentence. They are higher than they were a year ago. And I'm sure it's because of the tariffs. I ordered a pair of glasses. They are apparently made in China. They cost almost 40% more this year than they did a year ago. And that's because of tariffs.
It's funny that you say that, because in one of my Substack articles, I turned around and I made this point. Americans used to, for example, go to the store, whether it's the big box store like a Walmart's, a Meijer, or something like that, whatever, or a supermarket, and they used to pay with their debit card. Today, they're paying with their credit card. And I tried to, most people turn around and say to me, what the hell's the difference? No, it's a huge difference. Let me sort of explain. Your debit card is money that you have sitting in your bank account. It would be no different than going to the bank, taking cash out and paying for your groceries or for whatever it is that you're back to school stuff for your kids, whatever. You're using your money. A credit card is exactly what it is. It is, you are using somebody else's money in order to pay for your goods, your food today. Meaning, for many of these people, they're going to be paying interest on food or medication or items that they need to send their kids back, which is now costing, as you said, anywhere between 20 to 40% more because of tariffs and the big, beautiful bill. And my question, which is just like yours, where is the outrage from the American people on all sides of the aisle, Republican, Democrat, Independent? Because I promise you, if this was happening under a Joe Biden administration, if this was happening under a Kamala Harris administration, they would want to see people hung off the sides of bridges. This would be the greatest tragedy, according to at least the GOP, the greatest travesty in America's 250-year history, that Americans can't afford their own food. They can't afford their own gas. They can't afford to send their kids back to school with supplies. They can't afford to, fix up or buy items from, their big box store in order to do stuff around the house. Can't afford anything anymore, thanks to tariffs. But I don't hear this. And I'm just curious why.
I don't know why. I don't understand how so far he keeps saying, oh, it's not me. It was Biden who made this happen, or even Obama. I mean, he goes back into history. And I have tried to engage with several Trump supporters. They may deny they're Trump supporters, but they listen to Fox News and they repeat those things that they hear on Fox. And when confronted with facts, they say, well, I don't believe those facts.
Right.
They believe the stuff that they're hearing. And so they're believing when he says, we would be destroyed if we didn't have these tariffs. We need these tariffs. Well, the tariffs are now deemed illegal. Let's see what happens. Trade will resume. Things will get better. I mean, it was embarrassing to have to see all the leaders of the EU backing up Zelensky and making sure that the president of the United States did not humiliate him again. That's what they were there for. And to make it clear that it's not, if Putin wins Ukraine, he's not going to stop. He's going to go on to Poland, to Belarus, to wherever else.
To the Baltics. He's going to take over the Baltics.
Absolutely.
All of it.
And then he'll keep on marching.
Yeah.
I hate drawing the comparison to Hitler, but I remember reading a long time ago, Winds of War and War and Remembrance by Herman Wouk.
Yeah.
And it was so real to me that I could feel like I was on the train going to Auschwitz instead of on the train going to my law.
I read the second one.
That's how I feel now. I feel like we are actually in 1938 or 1939 in Germany. And people need to stand up. We cannot give up now. It is not time to tune out the news, which many people are doing. And I understand why. It's mostly bad news. Yeah. Look for the good news. Look for Judge Breyer, who was a Watergate colleague of mine, just had a ruling that the use of the military was illegal in LA.
And yet, they're now talking about sending it to Chicago.
Well, not talking about, they're pretty much set up for the arrival. And thank heavens we have a governor who has really been effective in speaking out against it. It won't stop it, but there's a lot of organization now saying we're going to march every day. We're going to stand in between. People aren't going to give up. It's just the wrong thing to do.
Well, let's hope they don't. So I want to ask you this because it's inarguable that we have a gun epidemic problem in this country. And it breaks my heart. Like when I speak to Fred Gutenberg, we talk about his daughter, Jamie, all the time. And it's heartbreaking to speak to survivors. And it's even worse speaking to the family, the parents of a lost child. From your perspective as a prosecutor, do you see this gun epidemic as analogous to past public health crises like tobacco or drunk driving, where eventually the government had to intervene? Because this GOP, right now, they cling to the NRA and the gun lobby like a drowning man to a life raft. What do we do here?
It's so outrageous, but there is a difference between cigarettes and guns. Cigarettes aren't in the Constitution. Guns are. Now, guns like today's guns are not. Muskets are what is referred to. A single shot weapon that takes, I don't know how long, a long time to reload. Not automatic weapons, not weapons with cartridges that can fire 100 rounds in a minute. So it's a different kind of threat. And it is clearly, based on the number of deaths that result, a huge public health problem. And yet you have Jeanine Pirro, the U.S. attorney, I am ashamed to say, for the District of Columbia, having announced she will not prosecute gun crimes. She will not prosecute anyone carrying a rifle on the streets of Washington.
Or a
shotgun, anything. I mean, a long gun. That is so outrageous. And she just released a now 19-year-old who was carrying a rifle on the streets because, no, we don't prosecute that. That's a total abdication of her responsibilities. It's totally ignoring the reality of the harm that guns do. We don't have a crime problem as much as we have a gun problem. And it's, Illinois has pretty strict gun laws, but Indiana doesn't. No big deal to drive to Indiana to pick up your weapon of choice or go to Wisconsin. I can't remember his name now, the killer in Kenosha, who got his gun there. He had a legal gun. He was a kid. And these people getting off is the wrong way to proceed. And you can't keep blaming mental health when you take away mental health programs. You can't keep taking away and say, well, they're stupid, they don't have jobs. when you keep cutting education, if we don't support the violence interruption programs, if we don't control guns, we're going to keep having death by gun. We are going to have that all over the country. And as bad as the crime rate is in Chicago, it's improving, but it's still bad. It's not as bad in many red cities. They are worse than we are. Why doesn't he focus on those places? Oh, yeah, it's because
Governor Pritzker is not the governor of that state. Hey, Jill,
right.
Final question for you. Like I said, the hour goes by way too quickly. I could spend all day talking to you anyway. By the way, I saw Victor Shi the other day. We were talking about you. I did. So let me ask you this.
I saw him too. We had lunch yesterday.
Oh, so you helped hold Nixon accountable during Watergate. It was brave. Looking at today's Congress, the Epstein cover-ups, the gun paralysis, foreign policy failures, tariffs, blah, 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 HHS with Robert Kennedy Jr. Do you see anyone in Washington with that same moral courage to stand up and to actually do something?
I do, and I see it fading. During Watergate, it was a different world. There was bipartisanship. Democrats and Republicans dined together, partied together. They felt that compromise was not a dirty word, that it was the way to accomplish something, and that something was better than nothing. We don't have that anymore. We also don't have the media environment that we had. Back then, all the media had the same facts. Now you have media that do not. They have one set of facts on Fox and a different set, which I believe are the actual facts, on MSNBC and CNN.
Alternative facts.
Alternative facts are what I consider to be available, and there are no alternative facts. Those are lies. And as long as you have that, you aren't going to get to a place of getting things done again. And that's what we need to see happening. You can see why people are afraid. Everybody who has spoken up has either been fired or forced to resign. And it's worth getting fired to speak out and make public the crimes that are going on. You mentioned Kennedy. What's happening there is unbelievable and dangerous, and is encouraging people like DeSantis to say, I'm eliminating all vaccine mandates. Nobody has to get vaccinated. That is endangering the entire population of Florida. And because so many people visit there and then come back, it's endangering the world. We are in a very desperate situation that calls for bravery. And all of us must speak out and not hide behind the fear that is reasonable. It's rational. But if we don't do something, it's going to be like what they said about Germany. At first, I said nothing because they were going after the trade unionists, and I wasn't a trade unionist. And then they went after, and then they got to me, and there was no one left to protect me. So I am one of those people I'm going to keep speaking out and saying what needs to be said, and encouraging people to pay attention to the facts, to really ask yourself, is this really true? Does it sound too good to be true? Because maybe it is. And look at that, and then act on what is true.
Well, Jill, thank you for joining us. You certainly make us all smarter. You give me some hope. So thank you for joining me. I'll definitely be calling you. Need to see you soon anyway. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, and keep up your good work, and keep writing your great Substack. You're such a good writer. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thanks, Jill.